Have you ever felt like an outsider? Like all of the rules of the polity, no matter how hard you try to emulate them, seem to always ostracize you? Have you ever found concepts like national identity, race, respect, responsibility, order, and tradition to be lacquered death that people throw around to excuse certain actions? Have you always felt like, have you ever always felt like that there was no love in the world for you as a person? And simultaneously, if you look deep down within yourself, you still long to love and to be loved. Well, then I have a story for you. Hello, everyone. For those of you that don't know, my name is Caleb W.H. I am a random poet and pretentious guy on the internet that likes to talk about some of my theological and philosophical ramblings, and it's very good to meet you. And I hope that this video that I'm about to make is for your comfort and edification. So you probably saw, if you saw the title of this video, you're probably wondering, man, how did a show about French vampires make a guy meet God? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today. For those of you that don't know, I am an Orthodox Christian, but I wasn't always that. In fact, I probably am the last person that should have converted to any sort of religion. In fact, if you guys watch my testimony video, I grew up in a very, very dogmatic religious household. And they were Church of Christ, which is specifically a Restorationist era Christian tradition that came out of the Enlightenment. And it is a movement that is characterized for its very strict view of Scripture, its kind of Baptist-esque roots, and it was actually started by a former Presbyterian minister and a kind of Gnostic. Of course, if you ask most Church of Christ people, they won't tell you that. What they will usually say is that they are trying to emulate the first century church. Of course, they will say that, but if you actually look at the history, that's not actually true. But that is the religious tradition I grew up in. I grew up around conservative values, men and women in certain roles. I grew up in compared to most of this theological tradition, I kind of grew up kind of light. This show kind of entered into my teenage years at a point where I desperately needed it. So without further ado, if you guys are even slightly intrigued by the concept that I've thrown about in this video, then I encourage you to stick around. I think you will enjoy it. So, without further ado, let's talk about the third story that made me, and how a French vampire helped me, well, technically a French human who is emulating a vampire, to help me meet God. Picture this. You are in your your dogmatic conservative family. Your mother is has been a divorcee for about 13 years. You personally are a high schooler in debate class and are at kind of the top of your game socially. You're finally making friends for the first point in your life. People are starting to have a mild respect for your antics, and through it all, you look down into yourself and you notice a deep boiling resentment going throughout your life, and you can't necessarily explain what it is. It is currently the Christmas season, winter of 2022. COVID's just gotten up, and you are rolling into your uncle's house. Your uncle has a giant house. Your uncle is a businessman who grew up in the Bronx and who ended up getting involved there, and now lives in Texas in this very, very nice house with a Republican wine mom. A Republican wine mom aunt and Bronx businessman uncle, and you are the dogmatic religious kid going into this world of social norms and tradition and all of that kind of stuff in an opulent house. And you want nothing to do with it. You may say that you are conservative. You may say that you wear the clothes of them, but deep down there is a deep-seated resentment that you have been holding for years. After all, you grew up very much bullied. You grew up in a very dogmatic religious household, and you have seen firsthand what things like national identity, race, and supposed love will bring people to do. And this is a very transitory period in your life. But today is Christmas. It's Christmas. It's the day before Christmas Eve. It is December 23rd, and your family is together for the holidays. And you walk into this house at around 7 a.m. After a Christmas light show. And you scurry off to your little corner in the other room. Your twin brother is currently having his own existential crisis of his own in another room, and your little brother, is probably on his iPad somewhere. And you figure that you have nothing to do for the remainder of the evening, and so you go scrolling on your phone. And you see a clip from the Case Study of Vanitas. A anime series but something about it catches your attention. The dramaticism of some of the characters, the music, the flying colors, and something about it chips its way down, and you and all of your pharisaiticalness choose to watch this show. And this show changed my life, and I'm going to explain to you why. So, a few things before we get started about this show. First and foremost, this is a TV show based off of a manga series that was created by an author named Jun Machizuki. One of her first mangas was the Pandora Heart series, which gained a reasonable following and a niche fandom as well. Vanitas is one of her second works, and probably her most recent work. It is a series that tackles certain themes of love, identity, and marginalization in one of the most fascinating and beautiful ways I have ever seen put to screen, or to page if you're a manga reader. But, and it is a show that scared me to death. In this video, I'm going to explain to you why. So, at this point in my life, I've got my best friend in my pocket and my muse somewhere else. The season is the winter season, and you are off in your little corner. And you begin to watch a show that seems to be speaking to every little part of your identity as a person. And that is what we're here to talk about today. So let me tell you a story. A story of French vampires, Pharisee messiahs who are secretly crying about it, racist priests who end up having a turn of faith, and through it all, one of the most beautiful stories of self-actualization becoming an identity that I've ever seen. The story starts out with a very, very particular line. Which it is a legend told of a vampire. And vampire kind in this story has a legend that they have passed down from generation to generation about a supposed curse that befalls a person who is born under a blue moon. Part of the Blue Moon clan. Blue moons are taboo and feared among most vampires, and this vampire, who is a woman, is born under this moon, and so she is cast out into the margins at a certain point. So before we get too much further into it, this series, what we're about to describe is massive spoiler warning ahead. Massive spoiler warning ahead for this series for certain very, very normal spoiler bits. Because I would not want to ruin this very, very beautiful show for you if you have not seen it. However, if you're the type to just stick around for those, that's fine too. Hey, if you came here for the substance, then you're going to get the substance. All right, so what ends up happening is this vampire is cast out. And there is a legend that goes around among vampire kind about this woman with a book. And this book is called the Book of Vanitas. It has the ability to simultaneously kill people and turn them into beasts of themselves, but it also simultaneously has the ability to save them, to reverse this curse, this ontological decay that a vampire can become, and restore their identity. So, hundreds of years later, we are dropped into 1870s Paris, or what I presume to be industrial Paris. There is a airship that is flying through this. We are stopped on a very, very lavish airship. And on this airship, there is a man by the name of Noe Archivista. He is a bubbly, white-haired cinnamon roll of an autism man, and we love him. We love him. He's based. And he is sent on this airship to Paris to look for this specific book for his teacher. His teacher is part of a group of scholastics, or what I presume to be scholastics, because it hasn't technically been revealed yet, scholastics of observers. And he is sent, and he is a vampire, and he is sent to grab this book. As he's standing on the, as he's looking around this airship, and he's very beautified, he sees a girl who is shivering in a corner, and eventually she faints. He runs over, and he catches her, and he sets her down in a chair, and he begins to speak with her and have some tea. It's a very, very sweet scene. But as they begin to talk, you begin to realize that something is desperately wrong with this woman. No one knows why, but she is horrifically cold and sad all the time, and she's having shivering issues. But as they have this very sweet conversation, Noe explains everything that I just explained to you. The Book of Vanitas, etc., the Grimoire, Blue Moon Vampire, all of that kind of stuff, right? So in this scene, Vanitas is in this scene, not Vanitas, Noe is sitting with this woman until finally she ends up getting colder and colder and colder, and she shivers to the point until Noe reaches out to try to help her or comfort her, and the woman screams out, "Don't touch me!" And from that point, all of the lights go out in the very, very dramatically. All of the lights go out in the airship. And a man comes barreling through the window of the ship, and it is that man and Noe will be spending their time together, and that man is by the name of Vanitas, and it is that titular character we're going to be discussing for the most part of this video. So, I was watching this episode in my corner, and all I remember was that I was extremely intrigued. At this point, I loved his dramaticism, his performative-esque aesthetic that he was going for. I loved the poppy colors and the beautiful imagery. I loved it all. I was already starting to enjoy it. But as the series would go on, I began to realize that this wasn't just a Tumblr ficky show about French vampires. No, this was a very, very fascinating case study on love, identity, and God. And, quite frankly, vanity and social marginalization. A lot of different things are discussed in this show. So Vanitas and this man and Noe start getting in this heated exchange where they begin to fight each other. Basically, Vanitas is like, let me have the girl. Let me have the girl. He's being all performative and gesturesque, doesn't want to let anybody too close, right? He thinks he's a monster. So he's like, or you're in for a world of pain. And the whole time, Noe's just like, yeah, that's not happening. And so they get in a fight. In this fight, what ends up happening is Noe ends up running away into the area with the church, and the woman finally takes on this malformed expression. And nobody knows why, but this vampire has accumulated this disease that is slowly eating away at her, and this is what they call the curse-bearing. Vanitas finally gets into the room, stands up, and declares his famous lines. My name is Vanitas. The vampire of the blue moon has given me her famed grimoire, but I am but a human. And it's very, very performative and fun and dramatic. I love it. And Vanitas ends up, in this fight, revealing that he is a doctor. He's not trying to kill the woman, he is trying to heal her. And he begins explaining how he begins explaining how people have been popping up around town since the war ended with this disease, and he is going out to heal them. Except that's not kind of what he wants to do. It's kind of what he feels he is forced to do. But anyway, they get in this fun fight, and what ends up happening is Vanitas ends up using the Book of Vanitas not to curse the woman, but to heal the curse with what they call in the series the world formula, or the makeup of reality itself. The book has the ability to degrade this, but also simultaneously to reverse it. And he is using the book to reverse it. So finally, the woman gets healed. It's very, very sweet and nice. And then Noe and Vanitas fall out of the airship, and they land inside of a church. Very, very fitting. I love June's little aesthetic here. And Vanitas ends up revealing that he is here to save the vampires, and he says it in this lacquered, kind of angry way. So, if you're intrigued by that, we haven't even scratched the surface. That's just the opening hook. If you're intrigued, please go watch it. It's grand. It's absolutely amazing. It's one of my favorite series of all time. What I proceeded to watch in that room full of skepticism and rage festering in a heart, wearing all of these clothes that I had been forced to wear by people in my life, in order to uphold social convention and stuff that I was never let into. And it was this little bugger that scared me to death, because he looked, and not in a cute, relatable anime, like he's just like me for real. No, he scared the pants off of me, and I now love him for it. So, if you're intrigued, please go watch it, because we're not even done yet. So, the world of the Case Study of Vanitas exists in the very, very tense aftermath of a war between humans and vampires. Humans are obviously human, and Vanitas himself is a human, but the vampires, however, come in two forms. They come in red blood, which is most of them, and blue blood vampires, which there are only one of those as of Vanitas's time period. And it is in this tense, post-war, very racially tense, if you want to put it that way. I don't like to usually say it like that, but like racially tense Paris, this 1870s industrial Paris that this story takes place in. And it is quite the setting for this show. And by the way, it has got everything that I could want out of a series. This first episode in, I'm like, I love this. You got outcasts, you got Pharisee messiahs, you got people that want to be Christ but secretly crying about it. It's the best. So, it is currently 7 p.m. and the last upload that I did of this got a copyright strike, so this is my attempt to try to rectify that. Okay, let's get on to the other parts of this. You guys somehow enjoy this. I don't know why. Anyway, so what I proceed to watch is a fascinating exploration of love. And I'm sitting in this very, very opulent house, this house of lacquered windows and stuff like that. So the series goes on. From here, and Vanitas and Noe go around Paris, healing these supposed cursed vampires that have begun to walk the streets. And you begin to realize throughout all of this show that you really don't know the characters. Like, there is always some secret or some facet that they're hiding from you. And the beauty of the series is how it handles identity, and how it handles a second concept that I think is relevant for this reflection: love. You see, most animes, when they discuss the concept of love, do it in a very kind of amour propre Rousseauian version of love, and a love that I have grown to detest. Growing up, I kind of grew up in the consequences of a different kind of love, which we will discuss, but I began to be horrified by the idea of lusting after people, that love was to be to pleasure myself, that this person was supposed to be something that I found pleasure in. I found that idea deeply, deeply repulsive, partially because I grew up in a world that people thought love was a business contract, this kind of I scratch yours, you scratch mine, kind of vain version of love. But I grew up simultaneously growing up with all this deep skepticism, being exposed to some of the worst facets of the human condition, and simultaneously being an outsider that was never let in to receive the good parts of humanity, I began to develop a kind of misanthropy, but a simultaneous love for connection. I wanted to love and I wanted to be loved, but I was secretly also simultaneously terrified of the idea. After all, I had seen, in my testimony video, I explained this, I had seen the worst aspects of vulgar eros. I had seen relationships blow up in people in high school. I began being deeply skeptical of this concept, and this series began to call me out on that. So to give you an example of this, you first need to understand there are 4 characters that really define what this show is. There are a couple of minor ones that are definitely of note, but there's 4 big ones. And that is Vanitas, the successor to the Vampire of the Blue Moon. There is Noe Archiviste, who is a part of a very, very opulent, vampire observer family or scholastic family. He is, and there are 2 others that you need to come to understand. And Vanitas in this concept of love, will be kind of perfect to explain this. So, there is a character that is introduced, as I mentioned. This is post-war, from a war between humans and vampires. So there is a woman that is introduced in this series named Jeanne, and she is what the humans and vampires begin to call the Hellfire Witch. She is a war criminal. Not only is she a war criminal, she is a war criminal that killed 10,000 humans for defecting onto the, 10,000 of her own kind, vampires, for defecting to the human side. Murdered them all flat. And Vanitas, being Vanitas, ends up meeting this girl, and they get in a little scuffle because they want the book, right? And he's like, "No, I'm not giving you the book. No, you're gonna fight me for it." And it's really funny. So they get this scuffle, and Vanitas gets in this position where he heals the curse bearer that they were going to heal, and then he walks up to Jeanne, and he's like, "All right, I'm gonna have to kill you," but before he does, he snaps. And he realizes in that moment, for some reason, he is violently in love with this woman. Just as he is about. And by the way, to be clear, this woman did kill 10,000 people. Okay, this woman is a war criminal. This is a woman that is. But Vanitas, in very, very Vanitas fashion, kisses her smack dab in the middle of the street, and he's like, "I love you." I knew this series was going to be, good, but this was the scene that I was like, because it was a very, 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 so this series kind of shows its hand as, this is going to be an exploration of Eros. And I thought by this point in the series, it's not going to be that crazy, Sorry, I got absolutely mollywopped in that assumption. For those of you that don't know, I am a Christian. And as I mentioned, I wasn't always this way. I grew up in a very dogmatic religious household. I am an Orthodox Christian, and I ended up converting after a religious experience in a bathroom where after all of my world and anger kind of crashed down in on itself, God found me there, pulled me out. And this series I had watched 3 months before that moment. Yes, I watched this series 3 months before that. So I was at the height of all of this skepticism and this rage and this terror that I was not able to explain to people. And it was this character that pulled me out of it. There is a moment in episode 4 where Vanitas is standing on top of a chandelier. And it is in this moment where Vanitas gives his mission statement for what he is trying to do. Vanitas begins explaining this very almost contradictory kind of speech, where he begins saying to the vampires below, in this very lacquered ball, there's this decadent ball that they're going to because they think that there is a curse bearer in the ball, which they would be right. And Vanitas ends up giving his mission statement. And this was the first scene in the series that gave me like genuine pause. Was when Vanitas gets up on this, this banister, and he begins explaining how he despises the vampires. He despises the vampires. He despises them more than he despises anything in the world. And yet, do not worry, I will save you. He said, and that will be my revenge. In loving you and being kind to you, it will be my vengeance. And I had to sit there and pause for 2 seconds because it sounded like me. And I knew this series was going to be good. That is when it showed its hand to me. And I became utterly fascinated by this character. So, outside of the ball, Vanitas and Noé's love interest, Dominique, who has her own funny story, and Jean begin dancing in, my apologies, let me go lock the door, begin dancing in this, outside of the ball, because the vampires have kicked them out of the ball, and so they're deciding to dance together outside in this little kind of alcove in between the palace that they're in, right? And so Noé asks for Vanitas' hand to dance. And so Vanitas is like, oh, whatever, right? And so he dances, and Noé pauses for a second, and he asks him a question. You see, in this part of the series, Noé is head over heels in love with Dominique. And he ends up sitting in this particular space, and he begins to sit there and ask, can you answer a question for me? And Vanitas is like, just out with it, tell me. And Noé asks the question that I think underpins the entirety of this little series. What is love? Don't start singing that song. I know you want to, but don't do it. Anyway, and Vanitas initially spits out his water, and he's like, you just wanted to ask me that? Like, really? And then he looks serious, and so Vanitas is like, finally answers the question with the words that I also would answer at that point in my life. I don't know. You see, the God that I had been taught was a good God. I was beginning to doubt that. I began to think of Christ, lamentably, I began to think of him as a monster because I see what the people in my life would use him for. I began to be simultaneously skeptical of my parents and getting in fights with my mom every single day at that point. And I began to very, very much question what I was doing. I began to question, do I really believe the things that I'm telling myself I believe? And simultaneously, I was deeply, deeply misanthropic with the concept of love. And, Vanitas answers the question, I don't know. And then he begins describing, but I can tell you what I think it is, right? He begins saying that he believes love is like this pleasure that he gets when looks at someone. Amour propre, as Rousseau would put it, right? And there's something, and Vanitas, when he's describing this, I'm disgusted, because that is the version of love that I have grown up with, and is the version of love that I despise to its most, I despise that version of love. The only version of love I despise more is utilitarian love. And there's a reason for that. But I knew at this point in the series that it was going to be good, but I was expecting this to kind of go in a strange direction by the end, and I was very lucky that it didn't. You see, throughout the show has very, 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 it is very, very not subtle with its passion. There are a lot of blood-sucking scenes. There are even more scenes that is the internet likes to call it queer-coded, but it is the substance of the story, I think, outshone any of that kind of ethos, and at that time in my life, I was willing to give it a try. So, throughout the series, Vanitas is described as, he's this kind of vain character. And I think that's beautiful because the name Vanitas means vanity in Latin. If you're familiar with the Bible, you will know that the 9th century Israelite king ended up writing in prayer as a description of the height of wisdom, vanity of vanity, all is vanity. Everything under the sun is meaningless. And kind of ironically, because the only thing that isn't meaningless is him, and that's kind of his point. That's kind of his whole point about that book, Ecclesiastes, if you're wondering. Really good book, you should read it. Anyway, so Vanitas begins to really, really come on to Jean, but you get the feeling throughout the show that it's all lies, that everything this character does, no matter how good or evil, he secretly resents it, and he resents the people around him, but he presents himself as this kind of compassionate figure, but if you really push him, he's angry. There's this one scene where he's talking with Dante, who is his informant friend. He reminds me a lot of my twin brother. And this character ends up looking at Vanitas. He ends up saying like, "Ah, you like her, huh?" And he's like, "I hate vampires and humans equally." That gave me serious pause. And then they kind of just throw it away as a kind of afterthought. But that really got to me watching, and I only had to watch for a little bit more. In order to understand. So the second scene I'd like to talk to you about is a scene that is in season 2. Vanitas is off to this little castle where there is a woman there who is supposedly a person who is causing a lot of the curses around the city. Vanitas goes there with Jean, and Noe gets kidnapped and brought into this little castle where these people live. And I've written about them before, but anyway, what ends up happening is after this giant fight, and Jean is on her knees with PTSD and trauma related to this woman here. And Vanitas ends up in a scene very, very interesting. He ends up leaning down towards Jean, and he begins explaining that he loves her. But there's not the kind of amour propre. It couldn't be that, because he begins explaining, "I will do anything for you. I would be willing to die. If it's a blessing, if it's a curse, let it be so. I will." It's the equivalent of saying, "I will, you're good." And that gave me pause. That really, really gave me pause, because that is what I now know love to be. But this series wasn't done. You see, this series likes to play a lot with these ideas of becoming and identity. As mentioned, he is a doctor that he goes around healing people, but Vanitas is he's kind of a performative male. I don't really know how else to say it. He goes, so there's this scene at the ball, like the previous ball that I mentioned, where he goes into this room of where Jean is, and he just like very much comes on to her, like, yeah, like, suck my blood. I kind of like it when you do that, right? And so he gets his blood sucked, and Jean ends up getting in this position where she's like terrified that someone could ever love her. And she begins explaining like, "Oh no, I'm a terrible person. I think I'll accidentally hurt someone. Like I can't do this, right?" And so Vanitas says one of the most terrifying lines I have ever heard, where he puts his hands on her face and he says, "I would kill you if you did." But he says it in a way as if it would like be helping her. And I was like, something about this is awesome. But as I'm sitting there being confronted with all of these questions about love and things like that, the series never lets you get a break. This series has moments upon moments of like really funny and comedic scenes. So in this castle, what ends up happening is after defeating this woman, Vanitas ends up being put in, they end up getting like blasted out into like the field of flowers, right? And there's this field of flowers that he's in, and everybody else is kind of celebrating or like, "Oh my gosh, we survived that, what?" And it was, and Vanitas is sitting in the field of flowers, and he's looking down and he says, "It's so cold." And I sat there for a good few minutes, but they don't let you do that. I was like, oh man, it was like every single, Vanitas wasn't done at this point, but every single like insecurity and bit of skepticism that I had came back. And I was like, there's something so like terrifying about what he's trying to say, because Vanitas is an outsider. He is hated by most people. He is a social outcast, and yet he'll put on their threads. He'll wear what they want him to wear, and for a time he'll be loved and he'll be cared for. But when it really comes down, he is terrified. He has begun to hate and see the monstrosity of what human beings are capable of, and what vampires equally are capable of, and he begins to resent them. And that really got to me a lot. Because here I am talking about conservative values and American identity, and I'm going home and I am being the active sufferer of it. I'm going home, and I was taught that God, or love, or virtue, I was taught that Christ was a monster, like this tyrant. Or at the very least, that's what they clearly made him out to be. This kind of whitewashed, kind of evangelical Christ. There was no Christ that hugged the harlots or gave bread to the poor. There was this kind of, always this air of like, this kind of air of dogmatism. Like, don't read anything outside of us, you know? And it was done in this very, very presentable manner. And I began to think that this God that I was grew up believing was not real, and or not that he wasn't real, but that if he was real, he was evil or something, you know, because I had seen people talk about love and respect and honor, and then use that as an excuse to do terrible things. In this field of flowers, Vanitas is sitting here with the idea that even though he did that, he is still alone. But he's not. Because Jean, from earlier, ends up running up to him, putting her arms around him. And in one of the most beautiful scenes in all of anime, she ends up kissing him on the cheek after sucking his blood. There was no amour propre, there was no lust to it. It was, I care about you enough to give you at least a little bit of warmth. And she stands up, and she goes into the middle of this field, and she ends up turning around and smiling. And Vanitas, for the first time, realizes that there is love for him in the world. That, like, there is, like, love is real, and beauty is real, because whatever he just saw should have annihilated him. And Vanitas, in the next episode, is brought into the Count's office, who is a kind of minor character in the series, and he begins explaining how he must be poisoned, that he's sick, that he can't even, like, he's terrified of the idea that love is real. Because he had seen what it had done to the worst people, and he becomes so skeptical, and so, because he had seen the worst of it. And Vanitas like, I must be sick. I'm losing my mind. Like I've read all my medical books. She poisoned me. She cursed me. She had to, right? It's very funny scene, because you're just sitting there like, Vanitas, right? You're like, oh man. So then what ends up happening is he gets kicked out of the Kant's office, and he runs away from Noe. Noe is mad, like, have mercy, please. Because Noe, being an autism baby, he thinks that he's actually sick. And it's, and so Vanitas goes, and there's this scene that they end up playing where Vanitas is running through. He begins to stare into the water, and he's like, what is this? Ew! And he begins to hear this couple behind him, like, kind of being all lovey-dovey, and it terrifies him. He is terrified of this idea of love. And he says, no, and he begins running. And in the most beautiful scene I have ever seen out of anime, Roland, who is a priest, is sitting there. And in this world, priests and the church think vampires are evil. But Roland is one of the first members of the church that thinks that's wrong. And Roland ends up sitting down, and in this very funny scene, Vanitas is forced to try to talk about the fact that he's in love as if it's on behalf of a friend. And Roland sees through it immediately. Like, he knows exactly that, what he's on about, right? And so Vanitas, and so Roland, in this very beautiful scene, ends up, like, convincing this person that she loves him too. And Vanitas sits there for a second and he's terrified. And then Roland, being the best character, probably my favorite character other than Vanitas, ends up looking at him and saying, "Do not fear! The love of God rains down on each of us." Like this super kind of preachy, but in a beautiful, like, he believes it way. Not like a dogmatic conservative way, but like a really sweet way. Like the kind of faith that if you know somebody like a grandmother, or like a very, very like sweet religious person, not the kind of dogmatic one, like the very sweet person that's like, I care about you, and I care about this, but I care about you, right? Vanitas like, no, whatever, right? So it goes away. And you begin to realize that this is a far, far different character. And at this point in the series, I am thoroughly scared. Thoroughly scared. Like, scared out of my mind. But the series finally ends up doing something that I wasn't expecting it to do. The series ends up telling us who Vanitas is. Remember at the beginning of this video, I said that Vanitas is a human. He is the successor to the Vampire of the Blue Moon. The Vampire of the Blue Moon isn't Vanitas, but he has taken on her name. Well, Vanitas, they then reveal Vanitas's backstory. And it scared me so bad, and it simultaneously cemented this show as one of the best pieces of fiction I have ever watched or consumed, and simultaneously one of the most formative ones. I am now sitting, blankets wrapped over me, in this back guest bedroom, thoroughly enjoying myself. I'm having a ball. I'm like shaking. It's like a very, very tism moment, but a tism moment in a room that I knew outside there were all these norms, these social norms of opulence. And I had begun to resent it, just like Vanitas had begun to resent humans and respect and tradition and nations. And so they then reveal why. You see, Vanitas, as you can probably imagine, is a very, very traumatized child. But here's the point of it, is they did know exactly what kind of trauma leads someone to believe that. Religious trauma. See, Vanitas was born into a group of traveling shows people. His mother died the day that he was born out of childbirth, and he was told constantly throughout his entire life that he acts a lot like his mother, and that he resented himself because he killed his mother. And his father, at the age of 12, at the breakout of the war between humans and vampires, is killed in an attack. And the people who save him are the Catholic Church. Or in this show, it's just the church. Right? They're called the chasseurs. That's terrible French pronunciation. They like to do this weird thing where they speak in English and then they speak in French. And they do it in the Japanese version too, or like Japanese, and then they just bust out a French word all of a sudden. And it's funny, and I love it. It's very me-core. So he gets inducted into this group at the church, who are the chasseurs, the people Roland is a part of, the priest who is, and he is taught from a very, very young age, and he's very happy to believe this, that vampires are evil. They are heathens, and they deserve to die, right? So Vanitas is the perfect candidate for this, except he isn't. Because there's a scientist that works at the Catholic Church who is just so happy for his little experiment to be done on humans and vampires. And he sees Vanitas as the perfect candidate for this experiment. You see, he has gotten a hold of the Book of Vanitas. He's not only gotten a hold of the Book of Vanitas, but he's also gotten a hold of this little vial of blue blood. You're about to get the symbolism here, because it's going to be very, very apparent in a second. So Vanitas is inducted into this experiment, and it's horrible. It is a level of human experimentation that no one should have to see or go through. He is tortured on the daily with him and his friend that he made in the experiment named Mikhail. And Mikhail works as Vanitas's kind of younger brother. And Vanitas, being this very jaded, still cannot have it in his heart to hurt this child, this broken, innocent thing that he really deep down in his heart knows that he is compassionate towards this little brother. And so in this very, very, very awful moment this Mikhail is getting torn away and about to be tortured in another room and possibly killed. And Vanitas is being walked away by the people at the experiment. And Vanitas offers, terrified with tears in his eyes, take me instead. Take me instead. And the doctor is like, oh, you're the first one to do this willingly. And Vanitas the whole time is like, I hate everything, and you are the worst, right? And so he's brought into this room, and him and Mikhail both, because he didn't stipulate how many people he needed, he put them both in this machine that was supposed to rewrite the world formula in order to advance some scientific cause. And Moreau tells him in this very lacquered language that he's going to die. And so Vanitas sits there and he's electrocuted, slowly tortured, slowly. And it tears away at him until this force comes down from the rafters. And all of the scientists are eliminated. And Vanitas and Mikhail are on the floor, and they look up and they see the vampire of the blue moon. And one of the most beautiful scenes ever put to screen, to be quite honest, this vampire's like, well, I really should be going. I got my gospel and I'm out, right? But you probably see where the symbolism's going. But Mikhail, being the innocent little bubbly child, he is like, don't leave us here, please, please. And Vanitas is like, bro, no, we get out here ourselves. But Vanitas can't really say it. And this vampire begins to be compassionate towards Vanitas. Yeah, this vampire begins to be compassionate and takes in Mikhail. And he's like, oh, well, I probably should help y'all at this point. It is kind of you're kind of the reason that he was experimenting on y'all, and I feel kind of bad. And so, but it's like this genuine kind of compassion. And Vanitas is terrified. He's sitting there in that moment, and he, by the way, in this moment, he despises human beings, and he despises vampires even more. And so in this very, very, beautiful scene, the vampire ends up putting out her hand and offering, will you follow me? Will you come with me? And Vanitas in that moment is so terrified and so scared, but he ends up taking that offer anyway. And if you asked him in that moment, he really wouldn't know why. Unless I think he wouldn't know why, but is Vanitas, what do you expect? They're brought out into the woods, and they're like, oh, it's just a bit further. And Vanitas, or should I say Luna, the blue moon vampire, introduces herself. Her name is actually Vanitas. She ends up taking off this hood that she's wearing, and this vampire of the blue moon is a beautiful woman with midnight black skin, eyeliner, the whole shebang, right? She slay queen, right? Like that kind of stuff. And so Vanitas in this moment realizes and connects the dots that she's the vampire of the blue moon. She's a vampire. And he pulls out a knife, and in a very beautiful moment, he stabs her in the hand. I'm getting emotional talking about this. He stabs her in the hand. Stigmata, right? The moons of Christ. And so, I'm getting emotional talking about this. And Vanitas says, why did you come and get me? Why me? Why did you come and get me? Have you taken us into the woods so you can devour us? Are you just not done torturing us yet? And she answers in the most beautiful, in a very, very beautiful way. She says, because you've asked for my help. Why would I not come get you? Sorry. This series is amazing. I would highly recommend, if anything I just said, I technically have gone over a bunch of stuff. I've gone over the Dompiers, I've gone over the church, and the priests there, and all of that kind of, and I've gone over Noe and Dominique's relationship. I've gone over the Counts and Amelia, all of that kind of stuff. You guys really, Lord Riven, Lucas, the Queen, like, you guys need to watch this. It's so good. But I sat there for a good moment. Oh man, and it hit me. It hit me. So Vanitas is brought in, and he has this fever because he fainted in that moment. And he has this fever, and Vanitas begins to explain his story. As mentioned earlier, he was a child who was born into a traveling shows group, and he's the reason her mother is dead. But all his life, he's being coaxed into being like his mother. And then his father dies, and the church comes up, and he sees the worst of human beings, and he sees the worst of vampires, and he has grown to hate vampires and human beings. And it hears a vampire sitting in front of him saying that she loves him and that she cares about him and that she wants him to get better, right? And the vampire, the Blue Moon, after hearing this spiel, Vanitas is crying out of his face, and the vampire responds with a line. She says, "I've learned something about you. Despite everything that you have seen, despite everything that you have faced, you are still a kind child." Vanitas, while crying, says, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." 3 months later, I was on the floor of my bathroom with, 6 months later, but 3 months later, I had a knife in my hand, and I was about to stab myself in a bathroom. And I thank the Lord I stopped. But from that point forward, I was looking for any reason to live. I was consuming food, pornography, all of that stuff. And finally, 2 months later, I didn't know if God existed. I didn't know if I existed. I didn't know what I was or where I was going anymore. So I was on the bathroom floor, and I crawled into my shower. And in that bathroom, I proceeded to meet the Lord. And the certain Nazarene found me in a bathroom. Look, you can read about it on my publication. You can watch my testimony video. But when in that bathroom, I remember Christ told me. I don't remember all of the bits of the conversation. It was just love and all that kind of stuff, right? But I do remember he did tell me one thing. He told me one thing, and I'll carry it with me for the rest of my life. It was, as we like to say, it was an apocalypse. It was revealed to me that when God made me in the womb, He wanted a thing that could smile at the broken thing and mean it. He wanted a boy that would smile at the broken thing and mean it. There was no grand prophecy. There was no future revelation. No prelest. All of that stuff, right? Like, no. If you ever get visions like that, please cross yourself. Of course, you can test the spirits and all that kind of stuff, right? But when I was in school, I would go to school and I would be bullied. And I'd be kicked on, I've been jumped more times than I can count. I've cussed more people out and been cussed at. I didn't have friends until very late. But I always had that fidelity. I was going to go to make sure it didn't happen again. I was going to go to those people that were also at other tables Vanitas may be my favorite messianic allegory ever. Christ entered into our incarnation. He entered into the human experience. And part of the Gospels that moves me the most is when Christ is brought in front of the Sanhedrin, and people are yelling outside to crucify him, to crucify him, to crucify him. They just hate him. They hate his compassion. They want him to be the same. They want him to be a good little Pharisee. They want him to be a good little conservative boy, right? Pilate brings him out in front of the Sanhedrin, and he yells, "Behold the man, why would you kill your king?" Those are two Gospels, technically, I'm quoting. And, that was like a bit of foreshadowing, because I was terrified of love. It took a lot of time after that moment where I was like, I don't care where he is. I don't care about culture. I don't care about national identity. I don't care about race. I don't care about respect and responsibility. I wanted him. Christ came down into that filth, that monstrosity, and he said that he loved me. And, whatever. I get emotional. Who cares? This is what this is for, right? And it got to me. And so Vanitas, Vanitas as a character looked like me, like the height of who I was before, and I'm currently crawling out, of that. I'm trying to become kind, truly kind. Not what I was taught Christ was, but what he actually is. What he actually is. Not the fake, the fake cultural version of Christ, but the Christ that enters into the broken, misunderstood, foolish thing, and he declares it loved. And that is why I love this series so much. Because it scared the piss out of me that I was watching a show about a boy who looked just like me. And now I recognize that this show was an act of providence. Yeah. And so I very, very much highly recommend this show. Thank you guys so much for sitting through all of this. And God bless you, wherever you may be, right? I'm currently sitting in this apartment. I tried to film this video about an hour ago, and it didn't end up working. The video ended up getting copyright stricken by an Asian corporation. Thanks, Asian corporation, for being mean. But so because of a video that I was showing in the back, and now I have like a collection of edits. That's just, and so that character right there scared me, but simultaneously taught me that love it really exists for monsters. Love really exists, and human beings, while they can be terrifying, while they can be horrible creatures, they can also be Edenic splendors. And simultaneously through it all, this stupid story about French vampires with a bunch of very fun, passionate scenes, these harpsichord string-filled dramaticism, and vanity of vanities, taught me that real love is wishing the best for the beloved, no matter how monstrous and cruel that they can be. And that is why the Case Study of Vanitas will go down as one of the most formative shows of my existence, and a show that I highly recommend, and quite frankly, a masterpiece. And it is a show that means so much to me for the reasons presented. This has been Caleb WH. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to put a collection of all of my articles that I've written about Vanitas in the description. I will put my socials down below. If you guys enjoyed what you guys see here, feel free to check out my socials and my Substack, and also feel free to check out my check out my Twitter as well. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. God bless you, and long live the good fool.